have time to highlight a couple of players, and one of the young men that I do want to highlight is Carlisle. He arrives early, he stays late. You see him out on the floor with Coach Armstrong, and just spending time, working on his, attack angle, getting to, keeping his dribble low, refining his free throw shot, and he just has that hunger and that continual thirst to take his game to the next level.
He's gotten better and better, and we are in the process of trying to develop him into a guy that can be a starting point guard on a good NBA team. Now, he had not done that to this point. He started with New Orleans. They were a lottery team. Then he was basically a backup in Indiana, and they were a playoff team. When he came here, we had some struggles early on, and he had some struggles early on. We brought in Derek Fisher because we didn't feel like it was fair to Darren to put him in this position, to have to be the leader of the team at the point guard position. And then, Fish was here for a while, then he was not here. And so now Darren's back in that driver's seat, and he's grown a lot during that period of time. When Fisher was here, he learned a lot from Fisher, even though it was a 3-week period about, discipline, approach, the importance of the defensive end, all those kinds of things. And so now Darren's got a great opportunity, with this club, and he did a great job in the Orlando game the other night of, being ready and stepping in and knocking down a big three at a really important time of the game. And there are going to be more and more of those moments and opportunities, and he'll be ready.
Yeah, we can see how his confidence has really grown, as you talked about late in that game against Orlando, hitting that three, but also against Oklahoma City to send it into overtime. So you see how he's standing up on the inside. He's getting that confidence. Now we got to talk about one of our contemporaries, Elton Brand, one of the veterans, the older guys on the team.
Wow, I don't know how he feel about being called one of our contemporaries. Maybe yours.
Well, he is coming on very strong in 2013. His offensive game has really come alive. But what I appreciate about him is that he seems to be in the right spot at the right time, and he's making big defensive plays, and that block against Harden against Houston was huge.
Yeah. He's, I can't tell you the kind of respect I have for a guy like him and what he's been through in his career. I mean, he's been one of those guys that is he's a hardened veteran. He's been through a lot. He's a multiple All-Star. He's been through a torn Achilles. He's been through some tough times in Philadelphia, issues about conditioning and weight and all these kinds of things. And now, we really wanted him, out of Amnesty. And we were able to get him, for a price that we couldn't believe we got him at. And after some struggles early shooting the ball, his game has really come around. And the thing that I love about him most, he's all about winning. That's all he ever talks about. He's been a perennial starter in this league, and yet in our situation, he's been more than fine with doing anything asked of him, on a game-to-game basis to try to help the team win. And so, he's a guy that you just, when you watch him day to day and how he approaches it, you have this kind of heightened level of respect for him.
You were talking about earlier the Sacramento game, and I remember specifically when that game was winding down, I saw Elton, going up and down the bench, giving the guys high fives, trying to provide that encouragement and that leadership. You can't put a price tag on.
No, look, he's been in the league 13 years, 14 years, whatever it is. He's been in it a long time. And, for our guys, and we have a lot of younger guys on the team this year, and we have some kind of medium-aged guys. Carlisle and Mayo are both 25. I mean, but they're younger guys, but they've been in it 4 or 5 years now. But when a guy like Elton gets engaged like that, it's very meaningful, and the more of that stuff we can get, the better.
Let's take time to preview the San Antonio game on Friday night. They are prolific from three-point range. I mean, they hit 23-pointers earlier this year. And, when you break down the game tape and you really start trying to figure out where are these threes coming from, they're coming from transition, from dribble penetration, post penetration, and then for the kick out. Talk about the defensive challenge that you have.
Well, the whole thing starts with Parker and, his ability in transition to break it down. Anytime he can get to the rim, he's going to get to the rim, and he's a great finisher. When you take away the rim and he gets lane penetration, that's when teams suck in and then they get the threes. And they have great three-point shooters all around. I mean, the guys standing in the corners are always ready to fire it. They got guys like Bonner coming off the bench. And so, you know, it's just, that's the beginning of it. Now, Tim Duncan is having a great year. He's averaging 17 and 10, and he's really been a monstrosity in the post this year, which they haven't had him doing a lot of the last couple of years. And he just, he has got an energy to him this year that he hasn't had the last couple of years. So they really have it going. Ginobili, who has been out for some games with a hamstring, I don't know if he'll be back for our game or not. But, you know, with those three guys, Parker, Duncan, Ginobili, I mean, that's real star power, and they're all playmakers. So it starts with those guys, and then the problems that those guys cause create a lot of the threes. So the game is about defensively getting back, taking away penetration, all right, and being able to guard them so that the penetration threes aren't there and the penetrations to the rim aren't there. And it's a hard proposition. That's why they're one of the best teams in the league.
You will face a high volume of pick and roll, so verbal communication is going to be very key, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they run, if you count them, I mean, they run anywhere from 65 to 80 pick and rolls per game. And a lot of times they'll run 2 or 3 in the same possession. And those are extremely difficult to guard with guys like Parker and Ginobili who, you know, understand the nuance of changing the angle. They can split, you know, they can do all those things. So it's real challenging. But again, right now we need these challenges. We need to rise to them. We need to win games. And so, you know, we're looking forward to that challenge. And, you know, this period before the All-Star break is really big for us.
Rick, how much has the game changed since you were a player? It seemed like it was just about defending inside the paint or guarding your guy on the wing. But now, I mean, we're talking about you're having to defend so many different pick and rolls.
Well, back when I played, very few teams even ran pick and roll. And, you know, back in those days, you know, I played with Larry Bird and Parrish and McHale. They would set a few per game, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 at the most. And that was considered a high volume. Since then, and you know, Detroit started this when Chuck Daly was there, and he had Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and Vinnie Johnson and Lambeer, who was a great outside shooter as a big. They started running those high pick and rolls where Vinnie would come off, and if you guarded him with 2 guys, Lambeer would pop and he would make those shots. And you know, Detroit was the team that probably revolutionized the game from a pick and roll standpoint. Since then, you know, the game's changed even more because now the defensive rules are such that you can have 2 guys guarding a guy that does not have the ball. And back in those days, there were grids on the court, and so everybody kind of had to be within a certain distance of their man. That's not true now. You can play zone now. The only rule is you can't be in the lane for more than 3 seconds defensively without being in a guarding position and touching a man. You know, and so the geometry of the game has changed. Now it's not as easy to come down and isolate every time in the post because you can really crowd and load up on a guy. Movement into random pick and rolls is where the game has really gotten hard to guard. Everybody is doing more of it. The teams that have the better playmakers are going to have an advantage. And so the game has gotten a lot better to watch over this period of 10 years since these rules have been in. The ball goes up and down the court more. There's less holding of the ball, and there's more movement to penetration, and we're seeing a lot more threes. And so that's kind of where the game is at. Now, where it goes from here, you know, I'm not exactly sure. What's kind of happening is big guys are getting a little phased out of the game, which is a bit of an oddity. So I think in the future you're going to see more big guys that have the ability to shoot the ball to mid-range and even long range. Guys like Dirk, guys like Chris Kaman. Brand can shoot it out to 18, 19 feet. And, you know, in San Antonio, they got Duncan who can shoot it out to 19. They got guys like Bonner that can stretch it out. Those guys are going to be extremely valuable.
It's nice to have that type of versatility. And as we get ready to wrap up our interview, you played for Rick Pitino for a year at New York. And one of the things that he always does, I'm a big Pitino disciple, I follow him, that he would always read to all of his players. The book is titled The Precious Present by Spencer Johnson. And I'm not sure if he ever read this to you, but compliments of the Big East Sports Show.
Wow.
And as you look ahead to these next, 40 games or so, you got to stay in the present.
Well, that's tremendous. I really appreciate that. And when you go through losing streaks, what happens is you get people give you a lot of books. I recently got Jim O'Brien, one of my assistants, gave me Norman Vincent Peale's book of his favorite quotes. And the favorite quote that I got out of that was by a guy named Anatole France, who said, "I prefer the folly of enthusiasm to the indifference of wisdom." And that's what our season has been about. It's been tough. It's been trying times. It's been, the tough losses piled up, but we got to maintain our enthusiasm, and we will.
Well, I know as a proud parent, too, it's always good to have some little extra reading material for your young daughter, too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Listen, blessings to you the remainder of the way, and good luck.
Likewise. Thank you.
Be sure and join us at eradiosports.com for more exclusive interviews.